Hello, this is John,
Chandler.
and this is Brainstorm Comics Turning the Page, where Chandler and I discuss the topics of comic books and give our opinions on what we think is going on with the headlines of the day. So the first one we're going to start off with is Naomi was optioned last week. Brian Michael Bendis, when he worked for Marvel, visited the Cleveland Museum dedicated to Superman, and he was inspired by the character, and he was inspired to create Naomi. Do you feel it's too soon for Naomi to get her own character, her own show?
I think it might be a little soon, but if you think about it now, the character has been around for a couple years. Her initial series was completed. It had a lot of traction, a lot of popularity there, especially that first issue was going for a lot on eBay and everything like that. It was a very hot commodity. She is now moved into Wonder Comics that he was starting for a while. She transitioned into Young Justice, which I was reading and I was enjoying. And I actually missed the initial release of the character because I didn't really understand what he was doing, didn't really get the concept.
A
But
lot of stores did. They underordered that book when it first came out.
absolutely, but I think getting that overexposure now, having her kind of bleed into other things. She was in his run with Superman and Action Comics. She was also in the Young Justice thing. I think getting her out there from a DC fan standpoint, I think you are aware of Naomi in some capacity. But I think, like you said, I think it's a really cool character. We obviously need more people of color in the superhero genre and especially women in the superhero genre who aren't there just to stand next to the men. I think she's a really cool character. I think it represents Superman in his best light, where it's not necessarily what he does, but what he inspires other heroes to be.
Kind of like you and I have talked about before. I mean, Superman is my favorite character, but I know that the opinion at large is that he's very milk toast. Very like the Boy Scout. And a lot of people I think view him as a white character. And I don't mean just like in terms of him being white. I mean in terms of like who he speaks to. So the fact that like Bendis took a character like Naomi and like, hey, he inspires everybody. It's a message that's not just for one segment of the population. It's for everybody.
It's universal.
Yeah, and I feel like that's an important message to get across, and I feel like Bendis did a good job with that.
I would agree. So I don't know that it's too early. Some people might not be 100% aware, but I think it's got really good potential.
So we'll turn the page on that topic. We'll revisit it again at another time, I'm sure. The second one we'll move on to is Daredevil is joining the Spider-Man movie. Do you think that this means that we will see the Netflix series move over to Disney Plus, or do you think that this is just a one-off?
Well, it's kind of hard to say a one-off, and this is, I think, now like the 40th character they've announced for Spider-Man 3. So on the one hand, it is exciting, especially for fans of the Netflix series who really like Charlie Cox, who think he really embodied the character, did a great job, but was left short-handed, and they were all cut before their time because their deals went up and going to Disney Plus and everything like that, and them having not being able to continue that storyline. So I think people are excited to see this character. I think if the movie does well, I think if the character responds well, I think Disney Plus has that kind of benefit of they've seen that kind of model. I don't know if they'll be willing to give everyone who had their own show the same deal. We might see like Luke Cage and Iron Fist team up in their thing. We might have a Defenders series with all of them together, but I think they are grateful to Netflix in a lot of ways because they're like, hey, great casting, great direction with a lot of those things. I can just use that material now any way I like.
Yeah, it's also kind of like I won't go like vulgar on it, but also kind of like a derogatory thing towards Netflix, just in terms of like, hey, we're gonna take your business away from you with our
Yeah.
streaming service.
That thing you were trying to do, we're going to do it, and we're probably going to do it a little bit better, but thanks for setting that up for us.
Exactly. But I also think that a lot of people are like love the Punisher series, and so I think that they are looking forward, hoping that like we see a continuation of that as well. Same with Jessica Jones. I know people love that character. Luke Cage. Iron Fist, I think some people would be okay if that did not come back.
That's the one I'm most excited about, actually, because I'm hoping that it gets a better job. And because I actually disagree with a lot of people. I think the actor did a fine job. I think the writing was what struggled for the series. So I'm hopeful that that would be a better thing. But I'm always excited for more Shane in my life. And he will always be Shane. He will never be the Punisher. But I love him in that role. But I call him the Shanisher. But yes, there's a lot of properties there that I think Marvel is going to continue to do well at Disney Plus. If this movie does well, I think they're going to use that model and maybe run with it.
So we'll turn the page on that topic. I think there's a lot more to discuss about that, but we'll earmark that one to come back to at another time. So we are moving on to the third topic. I will probably be a little bit more animated towards this one because I have a lot of opinions on this one. This one is Peter Tomasi. He has put together a great run on Detective Comics, followed up his great run on Super Sons, and he has been shown the door for the second time because the new creative team has been announced and he is nowhere to be seen. Do you feel DC treats Peter Tomasi fairly?
I think in the industry, there's a lot of great writers that get treated unfairly across the board, kind of. But it does seem like now, for at least the second time, you could even include the third time if you count his Superman Action Comics run that he had with New 52. That once Brian Michael Bendis was inspired and came over and Rebirth was happening, he got knocked to the side and all of his stuff. It wasn't just he got taken off the title. It was pretty much all of your stuff no longer matters, and we're starting from scratch. So I'm destroying all the groundwork you laid for the character.
Well, unfortunately, DC seems to have a history of this also. Dan Abnett had a great run on Legion. I know that I talk to you about this all the time because it still drives me insane 20 years later. He was putting together a great run on Legion. Mark Waid all of a sudden comes in and goes, "Hey, I'm Mark Waid. I want to take over Legion." They were like, "Sure." And he put together one of the worst runs of comics I ever read in my life. And I'm not bitter about it.
No, not at all. Doesn't keep you up at night.
No. But I feel like sometimes DC wants to go with the big name. They want to go. Sometimes I feel like they feel inferior to Marvel, and so they want to kind of live like in their shadow and like take some of their guys and
some of it might just be not understanding the power that certain writers have. Like Dan Abnett does have a big following. They did the same thing to him similar here. Recently, he had a really good run on Aquaman that I loved a lot, and then Kelly Sue DeConnick got brought in, and he just got kicked off there kind of out of nowhere and just got taken over. And she also, I thought, did a really good job. So it didn't work out as poorly as it could have, but I felt bad for him because I felt like he had a really great solid run and that nobody wanted to hear it. And the same thing now with Tomasi. I've really been enjoying his run, honestly, a little bit more than Tynion's Batman run. I've been enjoying it more, and now it seems like they're just kind of...
Well, he had built a great supporting cast and everything in Aquaman with like the terrorist and...
Oh, yeah. All across the whole community of Atlantis. But
yeah. He's a great world builder, and like I said, DC doesn't always treat their non-big names as well as the guys from other companies. So we're moving on to topic 4, the state of the comics industry after Future State. From the advanced solicits, it looks like all the top tier talent is no longer on the books that they were on, except for James Tynion. He is sticking on Batman probably because it's selling about 100,000 copies. Mm-hmm. So the question we have for this one is, what do you think the impact on the industry will be with this, with the top tier talent leaving DC and like younger people, newer people taking over the reins of?
Well, I think, like you said, like depending on, we have to kind of see for the young talent taking over. We're hopeful, obviously, that it's gonna be a good move. It's always, I always get worried when a bunch of people get moved off of things, whether it's with Marvel, DC, or anything. Especially if it's a run like Tomasi's Detective that I like a lot. I was enjoying that. Why do I need something new necessarily? But I think it could be good for independent comics. If a lot of these, we were reading an article not long ago about the artist for Tomasi's run saying that, he'd been working with, DC for a long time, and he's, maybe going to flex his muscles doing something independent or creative that he didn't have to do. Maybe something that there was going to be a story for DC, but now can be reworkshopped into something for independent comics.
So let's do this company by company. We'll start with Marvel. How do you think it's going to impact the Marvel comics?
I think that, in the same way that some of those artists might want to go independent and writers, some of them might not, and some of them might want to, Marvel might be able to say, hey, look,
the safety of a guaranteed paycheck.
It's a train wreck over there. You got a guaranteed paycheck over here. Like we also have some really great characters, and depending on how top the writer, maybe not Peter Tomasi yet, but a guy like Jeff Johns or somebody like that who brings big artists with them. They're like, hey, pretty much whatever character you want, like, steady paycheck, come on in. Like, we're not, like, whatever happened with DC, like, that's not going to happen over here. Like, you're going to be able to tell your stories.
Well, I know one of the things that, like, you had discussed was, like, what if Peter Tomasi comes over and maybe picks up, like, Moon Knight or something like that? So the second tier characters, maybe even the tertiary characters over at Marvel, will get a boost because top tier talent or even second tier talent can come in and pick them up and take them to that next level that maybe they were kind of lacking, because bigger names generally want to be on the bigger name characters because they bring in more money.
Right, but you have a guy like Peter Tomasi and some other Dan Abnett people who we, for better or for worse, maybe should be on bigger characters, but necessarily aren't on there. Now Marvel might have just a powerhouse if they already have, Donny Cates and Al Ewing and people of really great talent working on big characters. Now,
Jason Aaron.
Yeah, now if they have other artists who are willing to, look at some of those second and third tier characters and bring them up to maybe one day being a first tier character at Marvel.
Kind of like what Bendis did with Luke Cage. Luke Cage was not a top tier character.
It could turn into a real powerhouse.
So we'll move on to Image. One of the big announcements was Jeff Johns is coming to Image, and he's bringing Gary Frank with him for a creator-owned title.
First time in 20 years.
So again, bringing that top tier talent, starting something new, maybe getting to see something. Jeff Johns, I don't feel was really interested in doing a creator-owned one because he loves the DC sandbox so much. So it might be good for that also, like people exploring different avenues to let their creative juices flow.
Absolutely, and that's why like a company like Image is really cool and important anyway, because that's how it started. It's creator-owned characters. Like we know the industry, like we know that sometimes it's not the greatest over there with Marvel or DC or anytime, or just the nature of the comics business, but we understand that everybody here is a writer or an artist or works in it. They get it. There's no like corporate getting in the way. We understand what this business is. More freedom, and you have those writers who are, if a great writer is a great writer regardless of the characters they have. So if they're with these companies able to have their freedom, who knows what they could think of.
And maybe they retool a story that they had for Batman or Superman or what have you.
Sure, it gets reworkshopped and moved into a different character or some other type in the universe. But
so then we'll move on to DC. How do you think the DC landscape will look?
I think DC is potentially the most shaky. Obviously the independent, I think independents are books, and a lot of different companies, smaller companies, are doing pretty well right now overall and have good talent. So I don't think if they don't get a big creator shift that they're in dire straits by any means. But it could fluctuate greatly depending on if those writers and artists want to go independent or if they want to go to Marvel. That would be the biggest variable. But in terms of DC, I think they have the biggest home run or fly ball way outside of the park, nowhere near, depending on how it goes.
So I told you before we started filming this that, it's kind of like you give the young, hungry talent like a freedom, like these characters. You have a lot of potential to have some really like great stories that you didn't expect to have in the first place. And I know we're going to go over time on this one, but I'm going to say that to me, I relate it to like wrestling in the 90s. WWE shed their big money talent. They went to WCW. WCW had 4 or 5 great years because of that influx, but WWE like reset the whole industry because they let the young guys run with the ball and do whatever they wanted to. And they threw spaghetti at the wall and saw what stuck. And sometimes that produces some really great results. Now, don't get me wrong, like you said, there's also the chance that there's a lot of failures. But I think through those failures, you get closer to like coming up with great product.
Yeah, I think the benefit is that it's not completely brand new writers or artists. There are some names there that have been doing a lot of stuff. I know we talked about Detective a lot, but Mariko Tamaki has been doing a lot of good things and has a lot of good, credentials. So it's not completely obscure people entirely out of left field. There are some, talent, but still young, hungry, who have proved themselves a little bit, but haven't necessarily stepped up to that elite level yet.
Which again kind of relates to the WWE comparison, because Stone Cold had been around for a while. Not as Stone Cold, but like they retooled him. But we'll turn the page from that one and we'll move on to our quick takes. These are very quick, just what we feel about different topics. The doom and gloom of what Ethan Van Sciver was talking about. The question is, do we miss Dan Didio yet with all the doom and gloom predictions going on?
No, not yet. Hasn't gotten that bad yet. I think we both agree that we've had problems with, the world has had problems with Dan Didio for a while, but a lot of whatever your problems are with what's happening now in DC Comics, a lot of it was started and planted by Dan Didio. So I can't say that we miss him. Obviously, it was a different time there, but we can't say it was better because of him. It was more of in spite of.
Yeah. We made the joke of, unlike Billy Joel, he did start the fire.
Yes, he did start the fire.
Moving on to topic number 2 of the quick takes. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Last Ronin. Big hit. IDW, Kevin Eastman have both announced that there will be prequels and sequels. Is it too soon for this?
I think it's very soon. I think, though, the problem you have when you have these big characters, whether it be DC, Marvel, but the Turtles, they have movies, toys, TV shows. They are a big market. You see something like that with Last Ronin, where that first book just went so crazy about everything, then they just can't help themselves.
Didn't produce enough.
They didn't
of
produce enough. They needed second and probably what will end up being third and fourth printings. And their eyes just get so big and they see that money grab and they go, all right, well, how can we make more of this?
I will just throw in a quick thought of I feel like Dark Knight Returns was so big because there was such a big gap between when they revisited it. I feel like that's even something. I know I'm going to hurt your feelings by saying this. I feel like that's even what kind of damages White Knight. I feel like they should have waited a little bit more before they did the sequel. But
you're wrong, but that's fine.
Like I said, I knew I was gonna like.
It's okay. People are wrong every day.
That's fine. Moving on to the next quick take topic. Marvel has adjusted the Immortal Hulk schedule to where it is now going to end September of next year if it does stick to the ending at number 50. Your thought? You're shaking your head. Your thoughts on? Your quick take on that one.
Well, we were getting so close to the end, and it was already bittersweet because the book has been so great. And I know some people were worried in the middle there that it was getting a little too political or a little off base of what it has. But he's really, if you followed through with that, everyone who's still reading it knows that he has come full circle back to everything you loved about the series originally. Al Ewing's done an amazing job of that, and it was bad enough that it was ending, but now you're telling me that, I have to wait and then go months without getting any issues of it at all. That's really hard, especially since we were less than 10 issues away from it closing down.
I know we talked about it was like the end of a relationship and are we ending it? Are we not ending it?
Are we just friends? Do we need a break? Okay, we're done from the break. Okay, no, we need to go and break
You'd
again.
rather it just...
Either just, if you got to cut it,
clean
just
cut
the cord. Clean cut, walk away.
And our last topic of the day, of this week, AT&T possibly selling DC Comics was a rumor floated this week as well. Do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
It is just a rumor at this point, so I don't know for sure if this is something they're really kicking around. But it's crazy to say, when they bought this company, obviously, like we've talked about for a while, if DC Comics are run properly and people who know what they're doing, the characters have the potential to be as much as Marvel is in the movie industry and in the television industry. But it's just ever since they've gotten there,
they've gotten their own way.
I've predicted that I've made the analogy that it's like a crazy busy restaurant in the middle of a rush hour, and all of a sudden all of the tags for the orders get taken out and there's fires and pots boiling over and nobody knows what to do. You could have all of these plates of delicious food, but nobody knows where it's supposed to go, and things are getting burned and chaos is ensuing.
Well, I've also told you that I feel like if Disney had bought DC instead of Marvel in 2005, I feel like we'd see billion-dollar DC movies. It's not that the characters are bad; it's that the people in charge aren't putting the thought into it and building the same sort of foundation that Marvel is. And the weird thing is AT&T has built the streaming is building the streaming service is building all of the foundation, but they don't realize that they have like $100 billion characters. Like,
could be doing so much with they were, and if they do end up selling it, they might kick themselves because whoever grabs them might be able to do what they failed to do.
Exactly. So we were turning the page on this week's topics. Hopefully you join us next week. Chandler and I will be discussing whatever topics we choose to next week. We'll see what the headlines are and what we feel deserves to be talked about. Thank you for watching. Let us know what you think in the comment section. Be sure to like us. Be sure to follow us. And thank you for watching. Have a good day.